Now,
Hi there, Casey Berman, host of the Octopus Movement podcast. So happy to have you on this live stream. Again, this is the Octopus Movement podcast where we dive into the world of non-linear with our founding members. Now, today, I'm honored to speak with Willem van Esch, a founding member who is an entrepreneur who has founded various companies that we're going to talk about in the supply chain, logistics space. And really, he's founded these companies the world over, sold some. And the whole point of moving out of the companies was to help coach people and coach executives to become stronger, and has built on his wealth of experience. So lots going on, which you would expect from a founding member of the Octopus Movement. Willem, so great to have you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Casey. I'm very grateful for my life, and that has always been that way. But I'm very grateful with everything that I do and what I live, what I work, everything.
I love it. And now you've got an international executive, boutique executive search firm, recruiting firm. You coach them, people across the country, across the world. But you've got this background in logistics, shipping, maritime aviation, which I know the coaching has come out. I want to dive into the coaching and kind of talk about how you're strengthening people. But first off, I'm very curious about logistics and supply chain. And I'll tell you, most people don't really think about it until our favorite good or sweet or goodie is not on the shelf at the nearby grocery store. So, logistics, again, for everybody, what really is logistics? What is supply chain? And how did you get into it in the past?
Yes, well, what it really is that you bring things across the world for the and locally, domestically to the, let's say, the end user. And when you ask a child, where does the milk come from? They say they come from a milk bottle. They have no clue. It comes from a cow
Right.
or another good animal, and they don't know and they have no notion. But before that, there are, how do you call it? It's infinitely correlated. It's a system that's infinitely correlated because it starts, when you are fishing, maybe you eat a fish or you don't eat a fish anymore. But then, the whole supply chain go to the end, to the person who eats it in a restaurant is infinite, and then you have so many supply chains for one purpose. So you have raw materials, you have processing, you have manufacturing, you have agriculture, and all that has to be moved, everything. And we are also logistics people because we drive our car, we ride a bike, we walk around. That's all even logistics.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but the word logistic, it means logic.
Logic. Yeah. Logos. Yeah.
Logos. Yeah. And so yeah, there's a lot to say about it, and I could talk about it for a whole day. And how I got into it is because I really wanted to become a professional musician, an industrial designer, a psychologist, and a philosopher. And my father said, "Oh, how can you make money with it?" And I was listening to him, and I was listening to my teachers at school that said, "That's not for you. Get a job. That." And that's how I got into the port, because my grandfather and my father were in the port. So that's how I learned it. From a child, from since childhood. And I realized my other dreams too, that I am an autodidactic philosopher. I call myself. And I got my degree in psychology in the US. I was very grateful for that. I still am.
What's great about you and what I've learned about you is, you did listen to what our parents had a lot of good stuff to say, but oftentimes we do live the lives they wanted and believe the beliefs they have, sometimes not necessarily in alignment with us. But it's great to see that I know you can still pick up an instrument and have still done a lot of things that aligned with your soul more so. But it is sort of sending caution to the wind to everyone who's listening. We see this theme where many successful people, many of our Octopus Movement founders have at first listened to other people. It's good to listen to other people, but sometimes you need to see whether that is a belief of yours or a belief of a past generation. Now, we've got a lot of nonlinear thinkers, William. I mean, I look at logistics as, moving something from point A to point B to point C. That's kind of a very linear way to think about it. But you were saying logistics and supply chain is very nonlinear. It's this web. It's sort of multidimensional. How should we view moving things around the world in a nonlinear way?
Well, for a lot of people, it doesn't make any sense what I'm saying, because, we used to have a brochure in our business that said everything in the logistics is from A to B. No, yeah. And we do everything else, we always said, because at first, at your first impression, logistics is so linear. But if you want to see the whole picture, and I am a person who always wants to see the big picture of everything, because that drives me. And so if you look at that from 6 miles up, or 60 miles up to the earth, and you see the logistics, you see it's infinitely correlated, and it is linear, but linear is a subversion of the non-linear. I'd like to say, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. And then I want to dive into your coaching now, but what was it working in logistics and supply chain? How did that really align with your skills and strengths, with what William is really good at?
Yeah. I will tell you that I am a niche player, and in logistics I was a niche player, and we always did the most demanding logistics that is possible. It's emergency logistics, and for example, we also did helping companies when there was a shipwreck and there is a threatening oil leak in the ocean, and we would provide the logistics to bring the pumps on time, and that's a matter of hours. And then from one side of the world to the other, if they don't have the right pumps and there's a ship on fire, and they need to extinguish the fire and then make sure the ship is not leaking oil, fuel oil, and also cargo. And that for me was my favorite thing to do, because I would see the solution in a flash, because I'm a nonlinear thinker, and I have a few possibly neurodiverse things. I was not being diagnosed. I don't have a diagnosis for that, but I have a few things, I guess, and I would see it in a flash. Everything, Jack, this is the solution, and then bang, non-linearly, go to the solution. Start with the result, and then work your way back. And difficult countries was always my favorite thing. So the more difficult the country, the less accessible the country would be, the more fun I had. But then I had to lead my team to have as much fun with me, because it could be stressful for people,
Of course. That's really interesting. Is one, there's stress, but making sure the stress doesn't totally make you angry, enjoying that stress about it, that challenge. And the second one is something that I work in my consulting work, but is, keeping the end in mind. Like, yes. What is it we're trying to, starting at the solution, starting at the end, keeping that in mind, and then moving backwards from there. So, all right. So very successful career, logistics, supply chain. I know you sold some of your businesses. And one thing you've moved into now is this executive coaching. Tell us more about that. What type of coaching? And I'm curious, what is your coaching practice's ideal client? Who do you love working with the most? What does that persona look like?
The most ideal client I have is an open-minded client. That's really it. And open-minded to learn new things. That's my mindset too. You have a learning mindset. You're open, and that's the ideal client. Closed-minded people, if I can help them to open something up in there where they think that's closed, I would love to do that too, and I do that.
Yeah.
Like Frank Zappa, one of my favorite musicians and composers, he said, like your mind's like a parachute, and it only works when you open it.
Yeah. What is, and are you helping executives in their career? Are you helping them move to new careers? What are some of the more regular type of scenarios you're faced with?
The regular type of scenarios are, for example, that people want to grow in their career, or they want to change careers, they want to reinvent themselves. And then, you got to see the whole picture of the person, their private life, the professional life, the background, everything, and to see where we can help them, to find black spots in their rear view mirror, so to speak.
Yeah. What I'm very interested in fears, blockers, obstacles. I think part of the reason that most of us don't move forward or stay in neutral or procrastinate is because of just some breaks, just something holding us back. First of all, would you agree? Are you seeing blockers and obstacles coming up a lot in these executives?
Yeah. Only all the time.
Yeah. It's easy for us in our own lives to think that out of the 6-7 billion people in the world, I'm the only one suffering from fear. Those people can succeed, but it works for them. It doesn't work for me. I'm a special case. What are some of the blockers, the obstacles, the fears that your coaching clients are struggling with?
Well, the most, a very common one is even that many people will not admit it, is fear of failure,
So these are experienced executives who are still afraid of failing.
Even people at the high levels, and with large corporations, because then they're still on a salary. I say, even if you are the president of a bank, you are still on a salary. I say it's not your own money. And they can be very insecure. Of course, they can borrow their authority from their position, and the mark behind them, the name of the company. But then I always say, when I was young, I would say, well, a lot of these people, if you meet them somewhere in the street in an ordinary neighborhood, they cannot use that identity. And what I learned during psychology is that you got this borrowed power, so to speak, and you got authentic power that comes from within. And that is what I think is necessary, to really blossom from, and then also have a fulfilled, happy life. But you have your authority from within, your own strength, so to speak. Power can be a loaded word, but your inner strength, your inner authenticity, your sovereignty, that is what is more important than borrow your because then sooner or later something will happen, and the bursting of the bubble.
That authority from within. And I know I've been in spots where I'm in a situation where I'm respected, my title or whatever, and then you go to the playground with your kids, or you go to a whole other group or clique, they don't know you from anyone. Exactly. You got to build that relationship all over again.
Yeah, isn't it lovely?
It is. I enjoy it. I could see though how some people would feel insecure about that, where I'm a bigwig at work and I want to bring that power wherever I go, and you can't.
Oh, it's like Romans before the fall also then, because if you're only ego driven, something can happen,
so
which is not favorable.
So in that scenario, the head of the bank or a VP at a bank or something, what is it that the failure that they're afraid of? Is that they don't want to do something innovative in work because if it fails, they might lose their job? What is the actual failure that they may be worried about?
Well, I of course I don't want to generalize in the banking industry. It's in any industry.
Any industry,
right? And I think a lot of people who are very ego driven in that leadership role, which I thought when I was a kiddo starting my business, that ego would be important to have a certain macho image. Of course, I learned by failure as well, by success, that's not working. And so the ego-driven leaders, they think that everything can stop tomorrow, or that somebody will, that bubble. They know deep down from within somewhere that bubble can burst, and and it could be ugly. If somebody, like with the scandals of that we have seen during the last 15 years, with investments and all that, that these bubbles that were bursting, and because there was no, I think there was all ego driven and greed driven, and that is not as we see, but then put it into practice. That's what I say. I have to put it into practice because I have to put my money where my mouth is, right? As well, because I can talk about it now, but hey, I have to be humble every day and work on, keep my nose to the grindstone, as well.
Yeah. So no, that's the idea with this ego-driven leadership is, I was thinking of it like, it's great when things are going well. It's great when the revenue is coming in. It's great when you look good and even, you're not pompous, but you're a leader and everyone says, wow, look at the chest being puffed out. But we all know things can turn, this too shall pass. Right. And so we've seen very big ego-driven people over the years fall down. It thinks of a line that I have, be good to the people that you meet on the way up, because you're bound to run into them on the way back down. Right. So very interesting. So do you see non-linearity as a way to kind of temper the ego? Would there be is there a need for new non-linear thinking in leadership, or is that a bit too pompous for us here at the Octopus movement to think non-linear thinking could save the world?
No, I would say we can be humble about it, because I say it's a great additive, it's a great influx, it's a great. So if you have the linear and the non-linear coexisting and mingling, then I think we're doing great. It's not the end all. It's not the pen. How do you say, the whole
be all end all?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like what you were saying with those big emergencies. It was great to have your non-linear thinking the end in mind, seeing things other people don't think. But I assume having some linear thinkers on your staff, you needed that to get something done, to get something tactically done.
Yeah, to keep the ducks in a row, because sometimes, you forget one duck in your enthusiasm and your non-linearity. And then it's wonderful to have linear people with you. That's why I say the mingling, because they will help you to keep the ducks in a row together in a team,
Yeah, like it says in the comment, it's definitely a balance. No, I love that. We're a bunch of non-linear thinkers. People are listening, the audience. Your definition of what non-linear really means in plain language. How do you view it?
Yeah, you start with the word, where it says you don't follow a straight line, and that could be too simplified, because it could be a zigzag, but a river has a zigzag. A river flows like that, and so when you go into Zen terms and like that, I say, okay, the river flows, and you go in the flow. And on the other hand, I say non-linear people, in my perception, including myself, have different associative thoughts. You have different associations that you use, to think about something, where other people don't see these associations. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I didn't know about this word, of course, and a kid, and my parents would say, my father especially, what has that got to do with it? What's that got to do with it? That kind of, and then I was like flabbergasted, because they didn't understand it, because for me it was completely irrelevant. And to give you a tangible example is, I don't have a tangible example. Maybe you help me, and then I may have a tangible example.
Yeah. No, it's interesting how it's not just logic. Like, this is how I'm piecing it together. And we could say that when it comes to nonlinearity, you're seeing things, or in your mind seeing things that other people don't see. But there are connections. There are connections. There are ways that the mind works, so that the tangents that you go on, to come to a conclusion. I know with my kids, who are both extremely nonlinear, it fascinates me when they're in their teenage years. It fascinates me when I see how they put this together. It takes a lot of fortitude for me, because there is a long chain. It's a long conversation. Usually they catch me at about 9:47 p.m. at night when I'm about nodding off and I've got a conversation ahead of me. But I love it because I see the dots they're connecting, and the dots are not nonlinear. I mean, there's parallel paths of dots, right? So, and I'll tell you, I see how it is frustrating for linear thinkers, though, because we just view it as, your father was probably just viewing it as, this kid's mind is firing, but where's he going with all this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What are some, going back to fears and blockers, what are some obstacles that you run into? I mean, we're all people, right? What are some, we just had, fear of failure, fear of success can give you unwarranted stress, right? That's anxiety. I saw a great definition. Anxiety is the fear of failure in advance, right? Anticipating failure in advance. I think Seth Godin wrote that. But what are some blockers, obstacles, fears that William, you still suffer from?
I have stage fever, stage fright. Like for today, this interview, I have stage fright. I did a TEDx talk, a small one in the Netherlands, and I would have stage fright for 2 days. But as soon as I go on stage, it's gone. It's the same with playing music. That's my hobby, to play music. I'm a percussion player and drummer. And I play jazz and all that, and Latin, and when I have to perform, days before, I have stage fever and fright, but as soon as I go on stage and I pick my instruments, it's gone. When I start play, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so of course, I got my fire in my belly, and I got my butterflies in my belly when I have certain conversations with people. But that's all, I think, also a mix of passion and joy. And well, how will it go? But now I'm more in surrender, in that I know it will be fine. I have more self-confidence. But I learned down the road that a lot of people who are in the performing arts, that they also have stage fright and stage fever, and that they learn to live with it, and they just go that way. That is how I'm going now.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're very confident. I mean, you look great, you sound great. I don't think anyone would assume that you were worried or had a little bit of stage fright before jumping on this.
Yeah.
But it happens. Yeah. I like to bring that up just because I think we all live in our silos, and we listen to those voices in our head. And I just like to hear what other people are struggling with or dealing with, not to make it worse, but just to let everyone know we're kind of all in this together, and everyone's dealing with it. So
yes,
we've got an audience of folks here. Many of them are hungry for interesting ideas and thoughts. What advice do you have for the people listening here? And feel free to go on tangents, but life advice, career advice, coaching advice, what are some things that come to mind, considering that we have an audience of nonlinear thinkers?
I think if you can cultivate your curiosity for everything. So let's say that you want to have a job somewhere, or you want to start a company, dive in and try to find out everything, the big picture of what you're going to do, because that will support you. That will, then you will be an expert soon. In the field that you like to conquer, so to speak, conquer, or you want to have a new job, you go have an interview. If you do your searches, and a lot of people already do that, of course, it's nothing new I'm saying, but I just encourage to do that. It's one thing. And the other thing is, if you cultivate your creativity, you don't have to be an artist to be creative. You can be creative in anything. And if you can do that with peace, so stress management, of course, is so important. But and there are a lot of techniques that I give to people in the coaching, because that's one of my things. Because I was a very stressful person in the past, attention deficit, whatever you call it, ADHD, all those things, and I was so stressful and ambitious, that I had to slow down. In my 20s, I learned to meditate, and I've been doing that for 40 years. And I learn new things all the time that I can bring, to my coachees, so to speak. But so stress management and creativity. If you can learn to be more creative with everything, then you will find you become a new person, because you will also down the road with that creativity reinvent yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for me. When I was younger, I was always reading the books about big entrepreneurs and all that. Like, I remember Lee Iacocca. He was the guy who designed the Ford Mustang, and then he healed Chrysler Motors from bankruptcy. He turned it around with a lot of success, and he always said in his book, "Look at other different disciplines." And I do that. Like, well, I love jazz music. He would say, "I love music, all good music." And you can find things in music that you can apply in business, and things they apply in business you can apply in music. That kind of thing he was talking about. It was a really highly motivational book. It's called I don't know what it's called, but Lee Iacocca. It's an old book now, but it's still timeless.
From the 80s. No, I remember him. And the other example that comes up about the other disciplines, it's a great point, is Steve Jobs. The initial fonts in the Mac operating system, the inspiration for those came from the calligraphy class he took at Reed College, and also the travel he did in India when he dropped out of college from in India, and just the spirit. And so a lot of the designs in the Mac, which we take for granted now, but were really different in the 80s, came from this calligraphy class from a small liberal arts college up in Oregon.
Cool.
And that aesthetic also was infused later on in his second stint at Apple with the sleek iPhone and iPod and iPad and so on. And so, and that just came from something totally non-technical, right? So it's a great point with the new disciplines. I think also there's that rigid, there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And I see that with a lot of nonlinear thinkers, is that there's a feeling that I'm smart, I've got it. I see this in my kids, like, I can do this. There's a lot of things that come easy, but embracing the curiosity means you're kind of going into the unknown. Right? Like, there's an opportunity for failure in embracing the curiosity. Would you agree?
Yes, you can go into the unknown land, and I like to spend a lot of time in the unknown. And in the beginning, it was scary for me, and it's not that long ago, really. And but it is like fantasy land. It's like you're on expedition, and so then you can also even overcome the fear of failure or doldrums that you can find. Where there's no wind, you're sailing. There's no wind. And you can get scared then, but then you can also use that time, for inner search.
Exactly.
And so for me, that's very enriching. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I've got a to-do list. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to be as productive as I can, being an American and being in the workforce and so on. But yeah, there definitely are those moments. I'm going to butcher the phrase, but I think Gandhi said something like, I've got a full day of work today. I must meditate for 10 hours. And I'm butchering it, but his point was, that sounds counterintuitive. You got a bunch of work, you might as well dive into it. But his point was, I really need to go into the curiosity, the unknown, the quiet to be more productive, right?
Absolutely.
All right, William. Few minutes left. Again, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We know how busy you are, but
thank you.
Fun question to end. If you could snap your fingers, wave your magic wand, and invite anyone into your life, fictional, non-fictional, someone we all know, someone a celebrity from a story, alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would you invite into your current life existence and why?
Well, I'm looking forward to the future, and I don't have any intention to how do you say, retire or whatever. That
Yeah,
we can go a long way, and we can take care of ourselves. And I say I want to see my better self when in 30 years from now. I want to see my better self then and visualize that I'm the same person as I am now, but I learned so much more, and that's the person I would like to meet if I could.
Your future self in 30 years. So your future self from 2054 or so.
Yeah, something like that, or 2020.
And why? Why is that the person that you
curiosity? Curiosity. In a good, positive curiosity, really.
Yeah. how did you end up, right? What are you doing at that moment? What did you learn? What habits have you picked up?
My I believe, and a lot of our lives are malleable. A lot of our lives is makeable.
Yeah.
And I think it's only going to get better now from now on. I know everything is going, and that's what I love. It's that Renaissance man being reborn every morning when I wake up. Really, I'm not kidding. I'm also cranky once in a while, but
I don't believe it.
human. That's human.
I don't
But
believe
a
it.
little
I don't
bit
believe you're cranky.
in traffic sometimes.
So cool. This is great. I know another. I asked this question to another founding member, and she had mentioned she wanted to meet with her past self, with her past child, her inner child, right? And so now we're jumping to the past and we're going to the future. William, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time, your insight. I learned a ton, and so thank you very much.
Thank you, Casey. I really appreciate knowing you, and thank you for everybody listening and looking also. Thank you very much, everyone. It was a great joy for me to be here. Thank you.
It was our pleasure. Thank you again. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us on the Octopus Movement podcast, led by our fearless leader, Perry, and everyone else who is working on this. We are so appreciative. I'm appreciative to the other podcast hosts who please check out all of their episodes that they do. We do these throughout the month, and I'm just appreciative for the opportunity to be here with this great group of people. I'm Casey Berman. Again, this is the Octopus Movement podcast. Please pass it on, share ideas, share comments, and let everyone know about this inner sanctuary, this little sanctuary we have of non-linear thinkers that can be a fantastic balance to the linear thinking that's out there in the world now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.